Welcome to the Starting, Monitoring, and Stopping a Test Session video tutorial, sponsored by the California Department of Education. The information in this video is applicable for all the assessments in the California assessment system. However, some information may not be relevant for the alternate assessments. By the end of this tutorial, you will understand the process for setting up, launching, monitoring, and stopping a test session. Prior to testing, ensure that your test site coordinator has verified that all of the following information is correct and up to date for each student in the Test Operations Management System, or TOMS. Name, grade level, statewide student identifier, or SSID, test settings, other demographic information. Let's start by visiting the CAASPP and ELPAC website at caaspp-elpac.org. Select the Administer a Test Session button. Then select the Test Administrator Interface Logon button. Next, log on to the Test Administrator Interface using your current year TOMS logon access. If you are unable to log on, contact your test site coordinator for help. Once you've logged on to the Test Administrator Interface, you can choose to select the Start an In-Person Session button or start a remote session in the Active Sessions tab. For this tutorial, we will select the Start an In-Person Session button. If you are associated with multiple schools, an important message box will appear when you log on. Select your school or local educational agency, or LEA, from the drop-down list and select Go. The next most important step is to make sure you're selecting the correct test. Verifying the correct test is being administered is a vital component of CAASPP and ELPAC testing. A student who inadvertently finishes a summative test instead of an interim test will not be able to retest. Color is used to help you distinguish the different types of tests available in the Test Administrator interface. For example, green is used for all interim tests. Depending on the time of year and your role, all tests may not be available in the Test Administrator interface, so you won't always find all these options available for test selection. Prior to testing, all users who administer tests must log on to TOMS to sign test security affidavits. If a test security affidavit remains unsigned, only interim assessments will be visible on the operational test selection screen. A test only becomes available in the Test Administrator interface when the test administration window is open for that test, and if you have the appropriate role to administer that test. For this tutorial, we're administering the initial ELPAC. Select the initial ELPAC test group. Then select the plus sign expand icon to expand the options for the exact grade level or grade span and name of the test you are administering to your students. Once you find the correct test, select the checkbox next to the name of the test. For this tutorial, we will select the Initial ELPAC Grades 3 to 5 Reading Test checkbox. When selecting a test other than the interim assessment, a pop-up box will display, revealing a warning. Test administrators or test examiners planning to administer an interim test must verify, before granting students access, that a summative test has not been mistakenly selected. As stated previously, a student who inadvertently takes an initial or summative test instead of an interim assessment will not be able to retest. To select additional tests, if more than one test is being administered in a test session, follow the same process by selecting the plus sign, expand icons, and expanding the options to make your selection. Select the Back button to view all available tests. Each test being added to a session will populate the Test Selected widget in the right pane. Once you've selected your tests, select the Start an Operational Session button. The Operational Test Session ID is displayed at the top of the Test Administrator interface. Make sure that all students in the test session have access to the Test Session ID. So write or display the session ID clearly, including all letters, numbers, and dashes, exactly as shown. To add another test to the current test session already underway, select the Select Tests button. A message box will confirm the addition of a test to a session. Be sure to select the correct test from the list of tests that we reviewed previously. If you are using a scheduled test session, you cannot add additional tests to that pre-scheduled session. Now, at this point, the students will log on through the secure browser using their first name and SSID. It is very important to make sure that students with the same first name as it appears in the California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, or CAASPP, receive the correct SSID number to log in. Once students log on, the Is This You screen will be displayed. The students should verify the information on the screen is correct and then select Yes to move on. On the next screen, students will enter the session ID you provided. Only the test you, as the test administrator or test examiner, have selected will appear on the students' screens. The students will select the appropriate test. Once the students have selected a test, the Waiting for Approval screen will be displayed until you approve the test they've selected. As students select tests, requests for approvals will populate in the Approvals queue of the Test Administrator interface. You need to verify that the students have selected the appropriate tests and, as needed, review students' test settings by selecting the View eye icon associated with each student's name. The students' test settings will be displayed, including accessibility resources that are set and defined in TOMS. From the individual student test settings screen, you can select Set to confirm the current test settings and return to the list of students for approval. You can change a student's test settings in the Test Administrator interface for the interim assessments and the initial ELPAC, though those changes will not get recorded in TOMS. You can disable universal tools in any test for the student if it is prescribed as a designated support. Prior to testing, please verify with the site coordinator which universal tool may need to be disabled. Test settings cannot be changed for summative tests in the Test Administrator interface. Select Set and Approve to establish existing settings and approve the student for testing. Review each student's test settings prior to approving them. For the summative tests, if a student's test settings are wrong, you should deny the student's entry into the test session using the Deny X icon, contact the LEA coordinator or test site coordinator to correct the test settings in TOMS, and plan to test the student at a later time. Updates to test settings will take up to 24 hours. If a test session was started prior to the test settings being corrected, a Security and Test Administration Incident Reporting System, or STARS case, will need to be filed. Only LEA coordinators or test site coordinators can change test settings in TOMS. Test administrators and test examiners must be sure to get an up-to-date test settings report from the test site coordinator to verify test settings displayed in the Test Administrator interface. For more information pertaining to accessibility supports, visit the Accessibility Resources webpage on the CAASPP and ELPAC website under the Resources tab. If a student's test settings are all correct, you can approve the student to test. You can approve a student to test by selecting Approve for a specific student, or you can select Approve All Students to approve all students for testing. Students may need to complete one or more checks before proceeding to confirm that their device is ready for testing. Depending on the test your student is taking, or their assigned test settings, this may include audio, video, microphone, or text-to-speech sound checks. Finally, the Instruction and Help screen will be displayed to students. From that screen, they can select Begin Test Now. While students are testing, you'll need to monitor students' progress from the Operational Test Session screen on the Test Administrator interface. You should also walk around and check that the proper test conditions are being maintained. For example, ensure that students are logged on to the test, free of distractions, and are progressing through their test. As a reminder, reviewing student work or test questions is not permitted. The Test Administrator interface provides test administrators and test examiners information about the student's testing in their test session. The blue progress bar indicates the student's progression through the test in the form of a percentage. The progress column indicates whether students' tests are approved, started, paused, or completed. If students' tests have been idle, meaning there has been no activity, are unexpectedly disconnected from a session, or have pending requests for print on demand, the test administrator interface will separate each test into the Tests with Potential Issues table. The pin icon brings specific student tests into focus by moving them to the top of the screen. This might be useful if a student needs extra time, has issues with focus, or has experienced technical issues during testing. To stop a session, select the Stop Session button in the upper right corner of the Test Administrator interface. This will stop the test for all students in the session. You should warn the students at least 10 minutes in advance that a test session is coming to an end. Now is the time to make sure students complete their constructed response items prior to the pause. If the pause is greater than 20 minutes, students may not be able to return to that item, even if the item is flagged for review. An important message box will appear requesting verification to stop the session and log students off. Select OK to stop and log off the test session. Logging off from the Test Administrator interface at any time will also stop a test session. Thank you for watching the Starting, Monitoring, and Stopping a Test Session video tutorial. For more information, please visit the CAASPP and ELPAC website at caaspp-elpac.org.